Hello and welcome to Morecambe Modular, a channel focused on exploring modular synthesis. This series aims to travel through the alphabet of modular and take in some key people, as well as modules and techniques to create and explore electronic sound creation. This week, I hope to attempt a brief explanation into two exceptionally influential people. That's Deliah Derbyshire and Deiter Doepfer, as well as experimenting in the Eurorack with distortion and digital oscillators. Before I begin, I want to thank all of you who have subscribed or liked. I do this purely for selfish reasons, as making these videos helps me to understand my modular a little more, and it provides a structure for me to try and work out what each module does and how I can use them to make sound and hopefully music. For clarity, all of the modules in my DIY suitcase have been purchased by myself over the last 7 years and all with my own money. I'm not in receipt of any form of payment. All the views and thoughts in these videos are the ramblings of my own muddled mind. So, on to the first D for this week. It's Deliah Derbyshire. Deliah Ann Derbyshire was born in Coventry in 1937. During that city's destruction in 1940, Deliah moved with her parents to Preston in Lancashire. Her parents had originated from there. Later, in her exploration of electronic sound, she would mention the air raid sirens. The trauma of bombing raids must have had a memorable impact on her mind, even as an infant. Deliah was incredibly bright. Aged 4, she was teaching other children to read and write. At 8 years old, her parents bought her a piano. This must have been incredibly difficult for her parents. Her father was a sheet metal worker, and I imagine the cost of a piano must have been a few months' pay. Her parents must have noticed her delight in radio and music. During interviews, Deliah would say radio was her education. She won a scholarship and attended Girton College, Cambridge between 1956 and 1959. She studied mathematics but switched to music after a year and graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Mathematics and Music. When Deliah was at university, she would have been very much a minority, working class and female, at a time where only 1 in 10 university students were women. She also accomplished professional qualification as a pianist, awarded by the Royal Association of Music. I think her next career move was one of those rare occasions when the universe's planets align to create opportunity that must have been incredibly rare. She joined the British Broadcasting Corporation in 1960 as a trainee assistant studio manager for a radio magazine show called The Record Review. Around the same time, the BBC had set up their radiophonic workshop. Producers had identified a need to design sound and music for radio, television, drama. When Deliah heard about the workshop, she decided that this is where she wanted to be. Apparently, heads of production were confused by a request to move to the radiophonic workshop because usually people were assigned to work there. For the next 11 years, Deliah would create music and sound for almost 200 radio and television programs. It was here that Deliah would produce her most famous track, using tape painstakingly cut and spliced, test equipment which had been circuit bent, voltage starved, recorded and looped. She created the Doctor Who theme tune, which caused me to hide behind the sofa as a child. The score was composed by Ron Grainer, but Deliah's realisation of the music is certainly what made this music so incredibly memorable for so many generations. The original track was employed for 17 series, that's from 1963 to 1980. Deliah collaborated with a great deal of engineers and musicians after leaving the radiophonic workshop, including Peter Zinoviev of electronic music studio fame. Spoiler alert, I'm going to try and put together content for the edition focused on E for EMS and Z for Peter Zinoviev. Deliah created incredible soundscapes for plays, film and radio, but she also created her own musical compositions, many of which are here on YouTube. She was a groundbreaking artist in so many ways. Her use of rhythm and ambient soundscapes might be considered the forerunner of techno, ambient, minimalist and pop. Not to mention the avant-garde soundscapes that artists have done since Deliah. Tragically, Deliah had battled against alcohol addiction. She never really gained the recognition while she was alive for her creations. It must have been very difficult and very hard to gain the respect of her peers in a time when women often failed to be accepted and welcomed, a place where, coming from working class background, Must have just been so difficult for Delia to kind of make any progress in a world dominated by men. In 2001, she died, aged only 64. Her music is now finally being appreciated. There are some fantastic documentaries about her life and work here on YouTube, and as usual, I'll post links to a few below. From artist to engineer. In the late 70s, Deiter Doepfer studied physics and played guitar in a band. He made repairs to amplifiers, effects and pedals, but heard about Moog synthesizers. The price of a Moog modular was unattainable at that time, but Deiter discovered the Formant DIY synthesizer project and set about its construction. Through the building of this system, he felt there were some missing functions and designed and built a voltage-controlled phaser, a frequency divider, an envelope follower, and more. After that, he designed a polyphonic modular system, PMS, aiming for a 4-voice polyphonic synth with each module on a single board. This was when he became pro, able to make a living as a synth designer, but trouble was around the corner. Like many in the synth design world, the arrival of Yamaha's DX7 would make market conditions hard to sustain a living in analog synthesis. During an interview with Sound on Sound magazine, Deiter is quoted as saying, "Unfortunately, the request for analog synths decreased at that time as the first digital synths appeared on the market. I continued designing MIDI master keyboards and controllers, but I always kept the analog synth in mind. When the prices for second-hand TB303s began to inflate, I decided to return to my roots and designed the MS404, a standalone MIDI-controlled analog synth. Thanks to this success, I saw an opportunity to raise the modular synth from the dead." Deiter standardized the Eurorack format, creating the first modules based on his MS404 synth. Having a standard allowed other designers and builders to work to a common framework. Because Eurorack is smaller than most modulars, it meant that a wall of modular could actually fit in a European house. Our houses are small compared to those in the States or Australia. We just don't have a lot of space. The format quickly gained popularity and is now the most popular modular. Not only that, modular synthesizers became affordable. I know a lot of people suggest Eurorack is expensive. Personally, I feel it doesn't have to be. I picked up my soldering iron and built most of my modules, including the power supply. I bought used modules and discovered some really cost-effective manufacturers, one of which is actually Doepfer. They've always been really competitively priced. Doepfer modules and the rise of Eurorack have no doubt contributed enormously to the resurging interest in analog circuits, modular in general, and modular as a tool for experimentation, music and sound. His concept of compact, affordable system has led to the microcosm of designers, manufacturers, musicians and artists creating for and with Eurorack. So thank you, Mr. D, for all you've done and continue to do. Your contribution to the world of modular is very noted. If this sparked your interest, please check out the Doepfer website. Consider purchasing a Doepfer module. After all, every rack should have a genuine originator's module in it. That brings me neatly on to the other D for today, which is distortion. Now, I don't actually have a distortion module, so I'm going to use a Doepfer A119, which is an external input module and envelope follower because it's got a gain on it, and I believe it'll produce some clipping. So I'm going to stop recording and flip over to the modular, and we'll have a look at distortion. So here we go, got a simple patch. We've got the cosmic background from Frequency Central, acting as a kind of bass drum. And I'm always struggling to get my bass drums to really kick, so I'm quite intrigued to see what happens with this. And I've patched the output of the bass drum into the A119 from Deiter Doepfer. And in theory, because this is expecting a line level input, but we're sending it a modular level input, we should get distortion, which is the D for today, or one of the Ds. Now I think my A119 is a bit grubby. As we turn it up, we'll get distortion. I think the hissing's from the A119. For some reason it's got a bit of hiss in there. And I've patched that as well with some other stuff. able to FX send it to clouds. And we've got the logic doing the snare, which is a frequency central seismograph. And using the clouds, you can probably put some more feedback into them. So there's distortion without a distortion module. Okay, so I'll stop it there and we'll have a look at some digital oscillators, because the other D for today is digital oscillators. So I'll just whip out all these patch cables and we'll have a go at that. I suppose one of the things I really like about Eurorack is that once you pull it all out, it's gone. That patch is no more, never to be recreated. And I find that kind of cool. I know some people don't like that. For performance, I'm sure it's an absolute nightmare. But for fun, it's great. Because once you pull it all out, it's gone. Yeah, it was definitely the A119 making that noise. That's not so great. I haven't used that module much. Quick patch with some digital oscillators. Over here we've got braids. Braids has got a bunch of different tones. This is being CV'd into negative range, so minus 5 volts. And then next to it we've got the Wave Rider from Frequency Central. This has got a sub-oscillator output as well as a normal output. This is another digital oscillator. This has been CV'd to morph between the different wavetables. So bring that down a bit, and I'll bring the FX send down. So you can just hear the sounds on their own. So if I kill... oh, wrong one. So that's the Wave Rider 2 from Frequency Central. It's been replaced, I believe, with the Clang Stat, which is a great name for it. And I think the Clang Stat's got some additional features in it. But I really like that oscillator. If I turn up the attenuator. And you can do the same on the sub-oscillator. It'll morph between the wavetables. We'll add rings back. We'll add braids back in. And then if I patch that into clouds, it's already kind of patched, and I'll use the FX send on the frequency central script, the mixer. And we've got that kind of background tone coming in. So there we go. That's the letter D from ABC of Modular. I hope you've enjoyed the episode, and wherever you are in the world, I hope you are safe. It's a really bad time out there for people in Los Angeles, people in Ukraine, but I wish you all safety and peace. Till next time, take care.